Hello, you're watching the 51% here on France 24, a show about women reshaping our world. I'm Erin Ogunkeye. Well, this week we have a special edition for you on female genital mutilation, which the UN hopes to eradicate worldwide by the year 2030. Now, some 200 million girls and women are estimated to have undergone some form of genital mutilation. The practice, which the United Nations considers a violation of human rights since 2012, involves the partial or total removal of the external female genitalia. And yet it is still performed in at least 30 countries, mostly in Africa and the Middle East, and even by diaspora communities across the West. Well, for more on this, we're going to bring in both Dr. Wisal Ahmed, who's the global coordinator for FGM Trust Fund at the United Nations Population Fund. And also joining us today is Sadia Hussein, who is an FGM survivor and an immensely successful grassroots activist based in Kenya. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us today. So I'm going to get right into the questions. Sadia, as I mentioned, you are, of course, a survivor of FGM. What are some of the reasons that this practice still exists?
Actually, FGM still is rampant among the practicing communities because for a long time, we have not been saying the facts about FGM. Everyone was just sugarcoating and trying to rubber stamp what the community believes in. As a survivor who went through this, I can tell you that the wearer of the shoe knows where it pinches the most. Some people read FGM from the books without facts. They go to these communities and talk about a different cycle altogether, not focusing on the right issues that are the reasons why the community practice. For example, where I come from, FGM prevalence was high, 94%, but now we have reduced it up to 60%. We have worked hard for a 34% reduction of FGM. Now, if you ask me why that happened, is because as a survivor, I understand my community. I understand why they are practicing FGM. And that's why I had to figure out on the practical issues that can be tabled, discussed, and agreed upon by them, and also try to tell them the reasons why I feel FGM must end. Unlike the others who just depend on what is written on the papers, they go to these communities, mess up, and at the end of the day, communities feel like we are just mocking their culture. And I want to tell you today that FGM is not a cultural practice. It's just a control over women and girls' sexuality.
So as you suggested there, Sadia, FGM is, of course, seen as a form of violence against women and children. It can cause serious, deadly health consequences for women later in life. So my question now is for you, Dr. Ahmed. What is preventing this practice, in your view, from being eradicated completely?
Thank you. I'd like to first acknowledge that February 6th is the International Day for FGM Elimination. And this theme for this year is about people like Sadia. It's about FGM survivors. Her voice matters, and it's a call to action through their voices and to invest in survivor-led movements. FGM, as you said, Erin, is a global human rights abuse and a crisis that could lead to severe health complications, but it's not an easy area to tackle for several reasons. First of all, it's a deeply entrenched social norm that is handed down by generations that are about beliefs that are not easy to change, and they're often linked to positive values like purity, cleanliness. Secondly, the beliefs around this practice vary, and they're many. From them, such as the right to passage, to womanhood, or a way to maintain family honor by reducing the sexual desire so that the girl remains a virgin before marriage and maintain fidelity during marriage. And thirdly, there is a need for many players to be involved to eradicate female genital mutilation, and we have not invested enough. to end it.
Sadia, I wanted to ask you, because I know that your outreach programs in Tana River County, Kenya, have indeed been credited with changing people's minds about FGM, and you mentioned that earlier. What is it that works?
What really helped us is, for instance, using the practical examples. How can you reduce the urge of a woman by cutting her genitals? Telling them, you cannot reduce my urge. It's like telling you, we will remove your teeth so that you don't feel hungry. That is a lie. So for us, we use facts, we use our own pain and experience to ensure we are reducing FGM to zero.
It still remains the case that less than 2% of donor funding of the money goes to local activists like yourself. This is according to the global media campaign to end FGM. So maybe, Dr. Ahmed, you can speak to why has it been so difficult to reduce reliance on this top-down institutional approach?
We are working with over 11,000 activist-led organizations globally, but there is a need to invest more. It's really a question of finance availability. But I also wanted to add, Erin, that we cannot ignore other effective interventions like social marketing, media, involvement of religious leaders, cultural leaders, health workers and service delivery points who are part of larger institutions, ministries of health, ministries of social welfare, who can put these interventions to scale at a national level. So there is also a need to invest in larger institutions too.
Well, we're going to take a look quickly at what is happening on the ground in one of the countries where FGM happens. Now, 80% of FGM procedures, again, are performed on the African continent, where paradoxically, laws against the practice are the most common. Kenya is one of 28 countries on the continent where it is illegal, though so-called medicalized FGM is reversing decades of progress, as you'll see in this report by Allison Sargent.
Young girls between the ages of 7 and 11 sing songs and rhymes urging their parents to save them from FGM. It's part of an alternative rite of passage ceremony organized by a local nonprofit in Kenya's Kisii County. While Kenya banned female genital mutilation in 2011, the practice persists, particularly in Kisii, where 80% of the time it's carried out by healthcare workers.
In Kisii, because of the complexity, because of the medicalization and the secrecy, and our parents really feel like they know what they are doing, it's very complex in Kisii.
Doris Kamunto Onsomu no longer does the procedure, but spent years performing it on young girls in medical establishments. At the time, she believed it to be a safer way of preserving the cultural custom that she herself went through as a teenager.
One reason was that if you were uncircumcised, they felt that you would be sexually active unnecessarily, and so it's like when you are circumcised, like they reduce the libido a bit. Yeah, that was one of the major reasons.
But even when FGM is carried out in a sterilized environment, there are still major risks to the girl's physical, psychological, and sexual health.
I went through the cut, but I wouldn't want my children to have to go through the same thing. At a seminar I attended, we were taught about the complications women who were cut had when giving birth. I experienced the same thing when I went to the hospital to give birth.
UNICEF warns that the increase in medicalized FGM could ruin the progress Kenya has made in stopping the practice. According to Kenyan authorities, FGM rates fell to just 15% in 2022, but NGOs say the real figure could be much higher.
Well, as we saw in that report, then FGM is technically illegal in Kenya, but it does still happen. So now one of the things that the UN Population Fund has been focused on in recent years, if I'm not mistaken, is developing better anti-FGM laws that are more aligned with human rights. Dr. Ahmed, is addressing things like medical FGM or other loopholes a part of that push?
It is indeed. We have learned a lot over the several decades and working in several countries. So we have seen a lot of good practices, And we are trying to strengthen the anti-FGM, trying to strengthen the human rights perspective. In fact, we've just published a guidance, and it's available on our website, that helps policymakers, lawmakers, when designing or revising their laws, to learn from other good practices, to identify the loopholes that they could tighten up some more and address aspects around areas like radicalization or even the law itself. And this guidance also emphasizes the need to invest into enforcement, because often laws are made, but they are not enforced.
Now, the rise, this question is for both of you, the rise of post-colonial studies, I think, has also affected the discourse around ways to eradicate FGM. I'm curious to know what you both think of the criticism. Do you think that efforts thus far, especially top-down institutional efforts, have been ethnocentric? Have they been victimizing? And is this something that you try to integrate in your work? I'll start with you, Dr. Ahmed.
That's really a good question. We are now sort of evidence-based programming. In fact, I just wanted to share a study that was done in 15 countries, and it found in these FGM prevalent countries that women are often in there are couples where a man does not believe in FGM continuation, but the woman does. And in such sort of couples, like what we call discordant couples, the mother is the decisive factor for the daughter to undergo FGM. So really the power lays in the hands of the mothers at a family level, the power there. So the early discourse around the FGM campaigning, where the women are victimized and have no agency, we know better now. Sadia has talked about that. So the campaigns are not addressing the victimization. It's trying to utilize the power of women in making a change. There is no face to this global practice. Indeed, it is in Africa, but it's a global issue. FGM is practiced in the 5 continents, so it does not have a typical face. So we've moved away from the campaigns where it's ethnocentric, but rather address the roots, the power asymmetries, and use it to advance FGM abandonment.
And Sadia, what about you? How do you make it clear that women should feel empowered to kind of help this practice progress and be less victimizing?
When we are talking about empowerment, it shouldn't be just ending the cut on the body. It's about giving these women full confidence to make decisions at their own family level. Why am I saying this? FGM is not a standalone thing. It's the root cause to child marriage. It's the root cause to girls dropping out of school. It's again an issue of sexual, reproductive, and health rights. FGM happened to us, but not to our daughters. It ends with us. Reason being, when survivors acknowledge that what happened to us is indeed violence, not just a form of violence, but it is violence. And without empowering the survivors, they will never acknowledge that what happened to them is actually violation, and they will never be able to defend their own daughters from it.
Activist and campaigner, anti-FGM campaigner Sadia Hussein, thank you so much for joining us today and for that rather optimistic and indeed empowering messages to end the show. That's all we have time for. Dr. Wisal Ahmed of the United Nations Population Fund, thank you very much to you as well for joining us today here on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you too. Thank you too.
Well, that is all we have for you for this edition. But in the meantime, as always, we, of course, love to hear from you. So do reach out with your suggestions via our Facebook, Instagram, or X accounts. Until the next show then, bye-bye for now.